Hey man, say man, it's the one and only Jamaica man back at it again through the new year. Glad to be here for 11 of our quick breaks. This being important because you would have to have watched from number one until now, and the content has been exactly what I thought it would be. The response has been very surprising. I thank you very much for just stopping by to take a moment to see what I have to offer here to the basketball culture, from the relationships that I built this year, previously into this year, and the people that speak highly of what I do. I definitely appreciate you. So without further ado, I'm going to take less time this time around as we move forward, unless it warrants it, to be the best version of myself. So to get started, we're going to start in college basketball. Remember the team Alabama I told you lost, even though they had more NBA talent than Davidson? Well, they got an opportunity to redeem themselves at this time. Because of that loss, they dropped to 19. And unfortunately, that's what happens in the game. And I would like to say, in addition to that, I believe 1 through 8 in the ranks right now, men's basketball ranks, collegiately, I think it's a toss-up, and what you want to see to differentiate each other, from one team from another, is their ability to show their ISO scoring. These are good teams, but in moments that I would actually tell the tape between last week's games, men and women, later in the game, the difference at the collegiate level is whether or not you could get your own bucket. Now, if you could get your own bucket right away, you have NBA potential off the bat. Athleticism is also highly touted. But this Alabama team comes back the week after a loss to Davidson, which dropped them down to 19, to compete against a 14th in the nation, Tennessee Volunteers. But they didn't have Kennedy Chandler, who is their, I would say, top 10 to top 15 prospect. Give me Kyle Lowry vibes. That's as much as I'll speak on him right now, because I really want to see if he could lead a team, if you will. And he can, but how far he could lead this Volunteer team. And as we are somewhat halfway through the collegiate season, they were fighting hard in Tennessee against Alabama, but Alabama adjusted too. They didn't limit it to just 2 NBA stars in the lineup at a time, trying to overpower their opponent, because they assumed that their opponent wasn't ready to play in last week. They respected their opponent, Tennessee. Tennessee respected the moment, and you were very entertained throughout 2 halves. Jelly Fam started this week. That's the adjustment. J.D. Davison, I would say top 6 prospect so far, if you will, is a guy that came off the bench, and he was doing everything he was doing as a starter last week, but it was more impactful with guys that felt like, okay, if I can't make this shot, I can always get it to JD. So great switch. Appreciate you 2 players actually responding very well to that. And although those things were changed, or Tennessee had 1 less prospect on the floor, it was a very close game. Alabama pulled it out 73-68. But I like the heart that Tennessee showed. They were attacking each other. It wasn't really a size differential from the guard perspective to the forwards to the big perspective. It was just hard for basketball between 2 teams. You worked to get your shots, and it came down to the ability of one pair of prospects versus not having that playmaking, scoring ability of Kennedy Chandler to be able to resolve that. And I believe it happened the way that it should be if both teams play hard. So you can't complain with that. Moving on, you recall me talking about the Lady Gamecocks, if you will. They came back from 26 down and beat Stanford, which was the number 1 team in the nation. They were number 2 at the time. Well, they got exactly what they were asking for in Missouri this week. It was a hard-fought game on both sides, similar to the first game that I spoke about. South Carolina had their swag, their sachet. They knew what they wanted to do, but they were defended a lot better than they were the previous week against Stanford, because Stanford didn't have the same size. And these women at the guard spots, they were not afraid of the talent, the WNBA talent of the guard that they have there at this time. And they somewhat, in my opinion, respectfully, no disrespect to the fact that she could do what she wanted on the court, she was limited. The name that I want to bring up in this conversation, her name is Haley Frank. She was going crazy, creating opportunities for the Lady Mizzou Tigers with her driving ability. It wasn't that she was faster than the guard in front of her. She knew how to use her body well. I can't recall. I think her name is Lindsay. I can't recall her last name, but she was a staple in the NBA. I think she just retired with the Lynx. She will always be able to use her burliness and her length, the combination of the two, to put you on her shoulder or a midsection, if you will, on the side of the rib cage or her hip to be able to get to the glass. And Haley Frank was giving me that, but she had a slight more pop. And there was one time where they were pressing. South Carolina was pressing because it was late in the game, and they wanted to kind of like stabilize their dominance, which they were trying. It was like a boxing match. They were going back and forth. I looked, and I'm like, everybody is almost the same heart, and everybody's into it as far as the focus is concerned. And that's where myself and eventually South Carolina succumbed to the pressure of a team being able to play with them. It gave me the idea that not that they took for granted that they worked so hard to win the championship, I believe, last year, but they weren't challenged in their minds enough, and they were not, in my mind, expecting Missouri to be such a value opponent. They didn't disrespect them because they play hard against every team that they play. My thing is that when it got down to the nitty-gritty, the last possession, the way that switch happened, the way that Missouri was just, they knew what shot they wanted to get. South Carolina could only defend what was coming at them. They weren't prepared for that, if that makes sense. So it came down to a Haley Frank, I believe, right hand, fillet, contact for game, and they earned it, if you will. Moving forward to the prospect to watch. So I spoke about Jaden Ivy as my number one prospect, and there are three other guys that you could talk about, and I spoke about them realistically. But as we move forward, we're speaking about my draft board, pun intended. So Jaden Ivy is my number one prospect out of all of the guys that are coming through this year. My second best prospect would be Benedict Mathurin out of the University of Arizona. I believe he's a guard forward, if you will, that has the ability to play in the open court, play above the rim, play from 3.5 court to space out, and also get to the rim. He still is working on his ISO scoring ability, but his athleticism combined with his ability to be so consistent throughout the season with the things I just said, his open court ability, his finishing, his 3-point half court, and all of those things combined have the potential to allow him to get better at shooting, which will make him highly attractive at the next level, and arguably is somebody that could be in the top 5 because of his ability to transition from offense to defense very fast. Jaden Ivy has the ball in his hands more so, which allows for him to be my number one prospect overall, and can still facilitate with the ball in his hand and be effective without, in the same ways that Benedict Mathurin has shown me through Scout this week. So watch out for him, and I believe Arizona is either the number one team in America at this time, or they are one of the top 5 teams in America. Thank you very much to the college basketball landscape for that. Moving on to the NBA. The game I wanted to touch on there, remember, KD waved bye-bye to Joel Embiid in Philly. Boom. Sixers pull up in Brooklyn, and they went to work. This is how they did it, though. We all know that KD's getting shots at the mid-range, and he's going to pull you out to the right wing on both sides of the court if you actually know the game, for sure. Like, you watch tape, and it's not just slam dunks and great passes. James Harden has eased his way away from being hitting that official's wall, whereas trying to create contact, to create a rhythm, he can't do it that way. But what he does do is attack the glass and stay around the glass on the offensive glass to be able to keep a rhythm, to see the ball going in, to make those jump shots that we know he can make in rhythm with his signature step back. Well, Philly, they took that lump last time. Great punch, New Jersey. Excuse me. I always say New Jersey, but New Jersey, that's how I'm rocking. They always New Jersey to me. New Jersey and Brooklyn, however you want to see it. They rushed, in a sense, KD and James, or they made it difficult, respectfully funneling them to their spots, but they just made it a lot more difficult to score. I was trying to figure out how could I say that, because you can't stop either one of them, but you didn't stop Embiid as well. And what Embiid did is kind of similar to what James did. He made sure he always had contact with the ball, even taking some possessions down the court himself, which means that you have to account for his body, which created possessions for Seth Curry and Tyrese Maxey to score in rhythm as ISO scores, which they have the ability to do, in the lane on the drive, and especially from three, because once you collapse on Joel Embiid, his only job, if he can't get the ball in the bucket, is to find these guys. So it seemed like the formula that I saw for Philly to beat New Jersey, if you will, aka the Brooklyn Nets, is you got to let, and it used to be one superstar, but you got to let them do their thing, if that makes sense. To the best of their ability, you can test that, and you just put multiple bodies on that. Meanwhile, you return the favor against the Nets by bringing a big that they can't account for. Nick Claxton is too small, but a definitely energy guy that is emerging, as I spoke about to my East Coast conglomerate, that he would be at this point right now. But LaMarcus Aldridge doesn't really score enough to be like, okay, if I can't get this, then I can throw it to this person. So that potential hole right now without Kyrie is a way to do it. Joel Embiid takes the rock, attack the rim, get the ball, facilitate offense because they can't stop him in the paint. Tobias and Matisse Thybulle defend KD, and James Harden with team defense with Tyrese Maxey and Seth Curry scoring on the offensive end. So it was kind of like 3 on offense, 2 on defense, get out, score on the break. And the Nets play fast, but they only have 2 guys that can score, and primarily outside of the paint. Even though James is a very good rebounder at his size, he's not necessarily that guy at 6'5" to be able to stop a wing or a Joel Embiid for doing this thing in the paint. So New Jersey rebounded more. It was even points in the paint, but it came down to 6 makes. The Nets made 7. The Sixers made 13 shots. The Sixers also got 32 three-point shots up that night, which means that is a part of the formula. It's besides Embiid being dominant, you got to be able to move the ball and get shots where they count. But we can call it a bad shoot night for the Nets, which is not necessarily that bad. It was an 8-point difference at the end of the game. But the only thing that I need to see between these 2 teams to really see it as an exciting first-round matchup is Kyrie Irving. If Kyrie is back, road games, however they want to play it, that's a different element that they would have to guard and attribute maybe to Tobias or Matisse, which would limit the team defense concept, and you would make Seth small and things of that nature. But I like the boxing match, the boxing match and the back and forth between the 2 teams. I don't know if the NBA is, I would say, privy to trying to make them not play so soon in the playoffs, but I wouldn't mind seeing it as a first-round matchup. Secondly, we're going to stay on the East Coast game of the week. So that was the first one. We're going to go number 2, Bulls-Pacers. Pacers have a lot of players that are on the trading block. They want to fire sell their assets and rebuild. It doesn't seem like it to me, or most importantly, the Pacers are very professional. They're not allowing any rumors, as they say, get in the way of them playing together. And one thing that stands out for the Bulls to an extent and the Pacers, which made this game exciting, was their height and verticality. Most of the players that are on the floor can defend the passing lane very well with their arm reach, if you will. You also had comparable spots on the floor that could be dominated by specific players. The Pacers have 2 bigs that they could go after, use to go after the Bulls, if you will, and that is a significant weakness for the Bulls, similar to the Nets, whereas they have a big, but they don't have depth in the big to be able to sustain some sort of impact outside of their wing players. Nevertheless, DeMontis Sabonis and Karis LeVert led the charge for the Indiana Pacers, and as usual, DeMar, Debo DeRozan, and Zach LaVine, followed by Nikolai Vucevic. And also, Kobe White is showing himself proved to be also on the block, but a worthy asset to be moved. I believe he made like 8 threes that night, this week, if you will. And he wasn't having the best season so far, but he showed himself proved to be an asset worthy to, I guess, being an off guard. Not necessarily a point guard, but he's prone to be more of a scorer at this level than a playmaker. But he did his thing. It was a good game, and it came down to a double contested shot in the corner, pump fake from the short corner 3, game, ball, bucket by DeMar DeRozan. And, man, you can't ask for better defense, but you paid for the offense that you saw from DeMar DeRozan. You definitely respect his ability, and something is in him this year that we haven't seen since, in my opinion, the Pac-10 championship when he called game there, where he just was playing free. He definitely laid for them, and the Pacers, again, similar to Tennessee in the college basketball segment, they understand that they're not at 100% because the desire of them being a team is no more. But similar to Tennessee, they respected their opponent and didn't allow them to get off the hook with the win based on their talent. And I love to see that, and I wish the Pacers the best going forward in the trade market. Kobe White, the best in the trade market. Want to see the Nets play well again against the Sixers to see if Kyrie can be that to make them different, and then that will make them a first-round matchup. If they don't get Kyrie back, or Kyrie isn't effective, maybe it'll be a worthy second-round series. You want to wait to build that up. But these teams show worthy of the week to show you that you can score with a big, dominating the ball from 94 feet in. If you have two guys that can score at two different sides of the floor, and KD and James Harden, you can win. But if you have length, like the Pacers do or the Nets do, the Nets play very well defense statistically, or the Bulls does with their length as well, and just their culture of playing defense, you have the opportunity to win. So it's not just the three-point shot. It is a dynamic forward, but you also have to complement that forward with the following, or the former, if you will. Lastly, I got a question for you. Who are your best 7 players in the league? Now, keep in mind, there's an MVP race. I'm asking this question because are the best 7 players in the world automatically on the MVP race, if you will? I was told from my East Coast and West Coast conglomerate, it's a matter of not just impact, not just statistical numbers, but their ability, not only just their ability to win, but what they've done thus far throughout their career. It's a single season award, but it kind of makes sense when you think about it. I said my best 7 in the league are Steph, KD, Bron, Giannis, Jokic, Donovan Mitchell at 6, and DeMar at 7. I'll explain why. Steph is no explanation. It's a reason he won unanimous the first time, and I wouldn't mind to see it again this time because the way he's leading that team, they're like 87%, maybe 78% with Clay and Jameis Winston out, but it doesn't matter. Like, he's in fuego in the sense that he knows that he's going to get his shot. He knows that the ball's going to move, and you just got to trust your teammates, and they believe in Steph Curry. Like, it's special when offenses are ran like that, and teams can thrive on that, and they invented how you score from 3 in this new NBA, and he's leading the charge, taking the challenge, and he's the third quarter killer, if you will. KD is who he is because you have to account for him the same way you account for Steph. Like, if you don't stop this man, he's just going to score his way to a win, or will his way to a win. And you couldn't say that about KD not just recently ago, but you have to give him respect with players out last year, this year. He got hurt, recovered. And if you look at my story, I have a few highlights from the NBA this week. It's a reverse pivot move that KD does. And literally what it is if you're a naturally left-handed player, you're used to place your foot still to be able to pass, dribble, or score with your left foot most of the time. As a right-handed player, you typically pivot with your right foot. He caught the ball at the elbow of the free throw line and turned on his opposite foot, which your nervous system is not going to tell you to do that instinctually. You have to repeatedly practice that. And of course, they're all professionals, but the lack there of effort it seemed to take for him to get a bucket that seemed to go in like a layup, like he was right at the rim from 15 to 17 feet out with the opposite leg. We really didn't get to see that until Kobe later in Kobe's career. And I remember who he did it on, and that is a part of my practice repertoire, reverse pivoting. because if you don't actually practice it, you wouldn't actually know to look for it. So check that out. Check out a few highlights of Joel Embiid, how he was a one-man fast break. And I believe I have the game winner on there and a few other highlights. So moving forward, LeBron, 37. He's averaging 31 a night. This past, I want to say 15, if I'm not mistaken. They're in 8th right now. At the beginning of the week, they were at 6. And do I need to explain? Out of respect, let's do that. He is a quality player. He's been sustaining his team. And this time around, and I said this to my East Coast conglomerate, the later in the career he gets, the further he's going to move away from the rim. And right now, because of health and safety protocols, he's playing the 5. He's playing the 5. He came into this league 6'8", 240 point guard. The last guy that we knew to do that is Magic Johnson, okay? He had the abilities of Magic Johnson, and he was athletic. His athleticism is something that's latter on the list of his skill outside of his shooting and finishing. But he's playing a 5 at 37 years old, averaging 31 a night. That's why he's number 3. And his team is in the playoff race with no AD out for, I believe, another 2 to 3 weeks. And that team can't shoot right now. Everyone wants to blame it on Russell, but LeBron is being LeBron regardless, win or loss. And that is the capability of a player to still provide what he does to the game statistically, regardless of the result, is a key indicator to be a part of this conversation. Because someone threw Embiid in at 4. I threw in Giannis at 4. My West Coast guy threw in Embiid there. We had quite a conversation about the end of the list. But for me, Giannis is 4 because he's a 2-time MVP, 1-time champion. He's still consistent. He's still doing what he does. But he can't shoot like all of the other guys. But he is shooting like all of the other guys, if you will. And then I have Jokic at 5 because he won MVP last year. His numbers are even better this year. And his team is still in the playoff race as we speak. But he's not going to be better than the guys I named before him because those guys have more of an impact on their teams right now because of what they have, and their abilities are shining through better. You got Donovan at 6, who's really been the one top 5 in the West with their offense being the reason why they can shoot so many threes getting to the cup. And the lob threat of Rudy Gobert allows for that to happen, but Donovan is the reason that all of these things happen. And I think it's time to put respect on his name. And DeMar stands out to me because of in one season, and I would say just about halfway through the NBA season, he's made such a change. Such a change that the only change they had to the team last year was him, if I'm not mistaken. And as a result, they're sitting at, top 4 in the East? They weren't that last year or the year before. That's why he's there. Someone through the West Coast conglomerate threw out Harden. And I'm like, okay, that's fair. They have Harden at 7, Jokic at 5, Greek at 6, Embiid at 4, KD at 3, Steph at 2, and Bron at 1, if you will. And then when it came to the MVP race on the East Coast conglomerate, they threw Chris Paul in the mix. And I'm like, yeah, he's actually doing what Utah did previously this year, really taking the finals loss seriously and wanting to get back to that. So with all of that being said, please let me know who you think are the 7 best players in the NBA. And if you have to create another list for your MVP candidates as well. And let's see where we all fall on this list. Thank you very much for listening to my thoughts, gathering it with me. Please follow my conglomerate, Ism Sports, Eat, Sleep, Blitz on Eat Blitz Sleep on Twitter, Jamaica Man on Twitter, UOP, yeah, you know me on Twitter for our basketball coverage on UOP and football coverage on Eat, Sleep, Blitz. Also follow my sports confidant, Thoughts by Ty, on Twitter and Instagram to keep up with basketball here and football there. Thank you for your time. I wanted to get it to the 25-minute mark, and we are just about there. Thank you very much for tuning in. I ask that your new year is prosperous and that you stay focused on what you notice about yourself. You are the best version of yourselves, but no one else can make the change unless you do. Be true to you. Thank you. It's in you, not on you. Ism. Happy New Year.